My guest is Malcolm Jenkins. He is a strong safety for the New Orleans Saints, a two-time Super Bowl champion. He won a Super Bowl with the Saints. He's won a Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles, three-time Pro Bowler, one of the great leaders in the NFL over the past decade. He's a contributor to CNN. You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Malcolm Jenkins. Malcolm, thanks so much for joining me. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
So I've been hosting this show for 17 years, and I got to tell you, I've interviewed a lot of athletes. I don't know that I've interviewed anyone who is on the ball like you are with everything that you're doing off the field, business, in the community. So I tip my hat to you for that. But let's start with, where did that come from?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me is I watched my parents, teach me lessons through action. I saw my dad really just give everything that he had to not only his three boys, but the other children in the neighborhood. And I saw the kind of impact that had over time. And so, that was a small investment by somebody with, way less resources than me, a very smaller, substantially smaller platform than me, but had life-changing impact on the people that he extended himself to. And so for me, I grew up with that lesson to understand that my success is not enough. Is not very beneficial to me or satisfying for me to make it to the top and be the only one there to celebrate. And so for me, I'm always looking for opportunities to not only advance myself, but create opportunities for others to leverage their skills, leverage their capital and opportunities. I just think that's an important cornerstone to all the work that I do.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of your work specifically in a minute. But when you got into the NFL, was there a player or a few players who kind of took you under their wing and said, this is the right way to do it?
Well, I think they're the lesson that I learned, and I think many guys in the NFL and professional athletes in general, it's a hard lesson to learn, is that we don't talk about money enough. I had the opportunity to be around. The first guy I got around was Larry Fitzgerald. Before I even got into the league, I trained with him one summer, got to be at his house, and he's a guy who's been in business, been in investing, has done a ton of things. Now is a part owner of, an NBA team, he's done some really great things. And it's, you realize that he's been an open book, but you got to ask the questions, right? You got to ask and be inquisitive. And I think not enough of us do that, me included. And it wasn't until, I made a little bit of money, outlived some of the mistakes that I made as a young professional athlete, that I really started to think long-term and really take control of my own finances. I think that's the first part, is getting kind of away from the taboo and the fears of just asking for help or asking what somebody's experience has been. Understanding that all of us are going pretty much through the same thing. I've had the same, experiences. Some have done good, some have done bad. All of those lessons are important for us to pass down, but we don't talk about it enough. So that was the biggest thing that I wish I would have done earlier, is really just ask for help. Like, hey, Larry, you've made a lot of money for a long time and have figured out how to use your celebrity as well, your social capital, to create opportunities. Like, how are you doing that? Who should I be talking to? What should I be looking at? All of those things, I wish I had a little bit earlier. And I'm focused now on creating opportunities and avenues to educate guys first, so that they can kind of be in control of their own finances.
So do you feel like those conversations are taking place more now in locker rooms? Like I've interviewed NBA guys, and they say that they feel like those are conversations taking place more in their locker room. It used to be, what kind of car are you driving? What kind of rims do you have? What kind of stereo system? Now they're talking about investing together or starting businesses together.
Yeah, I think you see it more in the NBA. It's fewer of them, and they have a little bit more access to a lot of those deals. Especially, they have relationships with team owners where team owners will allow them to invest, and be in their circles. That dynamic doesn't really exist in the NFL just yet. And so I think we're a little bit behind, which is the reason I'm so motivated to get guys thinking about it, because I do think that the NFL is, every year we grow kind of our notoriety, new players, and the space that we take up, in society grows every year. And I think athletes are definitely starting to move towards their own power. but I want them to know that it's not just social capital that they're raising, right? They're not just popular to be sponsors or to be or endorsements and things like that, but they can actually have equity and use that to grow wealth and to move into doors that most of the times or any other time is going to be closed to African American investors. But because of who we are, we have an opportunity to move different. And it's just educating guys on what those opportunities look like, how to surround yourself, what are the lessons about group economics, right? And the dangers of doing it by yourself and what you can do together and how other people make money, how to move from the idea that you labor with your body for as long as you can, you save as much as you can, and then you see how long that lasts for you and your family. That's not how anybody else makes life-changing money. That's not how anybody else creates generational wealth. But those are the lessons that we've been taught. We've been conditioned to work, play the sport as long as our bodies can do it. And then once we can't, hopefully we've saved enough to live off of. And that's economic suicide if you're talking about longevity. And so we have to recondition the way we've been taught to look at, our own leverage, but then also our finances.
Let's talk about the announcement of Malcolm Inc. This has got to be a really proud time for you. You've got 6 different companies under the Malcolm Inc. umbrella: Broad Street Ventures, Disrupt Foods, E&R Real Estate Group, Listen Up Media, Damari, and the Malcolm Jenkins Foundation. That's a lot of different companies. Everyone's doing something different, but they're all under the Malcolm Inc. umbrella. First, I mean, my gosh, Malcolm, it's got to be such an amazing accomplishment for you that you've got these 6 companies under an umbrella that bears your name.
Yeah, I think they're all extensions of me. I would say there's technically 5 companies. Broad Street Ventures is an entity in its own, but obviously, was kind of put together by myself and Rolanda Johnson, who was the general partner of it. But all of these companies, are extensions of myself, whether it's the things that I do in the community, whether it's my business, Damari's Fashion. You have Listen Up Media, which is, my creative kind of outlet, doing films, documentaries, things like that. Disrupt Foods, we're doing franchising opportunities. And in all of those spaces, it really comes down to creating generational wealth, right? Not only for myself, but being able to create opportunities for others. So being able to create space for Rolanda Johnson to be, the CFO, and Joe Johnson to take over all of the things, the operating of all of our restaurants and franchising and real estate. It's creating opportunities for other people. India Robertson is the CEO or the president of Listen Up Media. And so to be able to employ those people who are closest to me, these are lifelong friends that I've had, means a lot as well. So to have an executive team that all looks like me, it's not only just about the creation of, a company and my namesake, but what that means from a legacy standpoint for those around me.
When you were growing up and coming up, some of the people that you just mentioned that have been friends of yours, did you guys ever dream that this was possible?
No, to be honest, no. It wasn't until, probably my second year in the NFL, myself and Rolanda Johnson, we've known each other literally since preschool.
Wow.
She's like, hey, you should be thinking about real estate. And then I bought my first piece of real estate. And a few years later, she's like, you should be thinking about franchising. Got into franchising. And then it got to the point where they're earning, their corporate jobs. They're doing a great job. They're moving up in the ranks, but they're earning somebody else some money, right? And I have all these things that I want to do, but it's getting a little bit too big for me to manage. And so to be able to have people that are qualified to do the work, that have the experience, that you can trust to come on and you partner up to do things together, where we're all kind of using our skill sets to elevate the collective. That tribe mentality is something that I've dreamed of. That's something that my dad taught me, and I never knew what it looked like from a business standpoint. But to be here now is definitely a proud moment to be able, like I said, to not only to get to this place myself, but to be able to bring those I love with me and create opportunities for people who look like me in my community.
you play on a football team. Business is also like being part of a team, right? And you're such a leader on the football field. I see that with you in the business world and in the community world as well. Do you think some of the skills that you've learned from sports and playing on a team have translated for you in the business world?
100%. I think it's the same. I've been a captain on almost every team I've been on. And one of the biggest things I've learned from being in a leadership position is all the time is that the best leaders tend to follow the best and listen the best and know that they aren't the most talented, and everybody's role is essential to the success of everybody. And so, that, like I said, I enjoy putting other people and delegating them to be responsible for, for the execution. And for me, it's just, then my goal is just the vision. How do I keep us all focused on, the voice of our businesses, the purpose, what is the impact that we want to have and get accomplished? And then allow them to do what they do best to execute that idea. That when we started to align ourselves in that function, in that way, things, really just started to take off. And so we've been excited to grow and create not only, like I said, the vehicles for us to win, but how do we then take those same access, those same doors that we're kicking open, how do we prop them open for others to come in and be able to share in the same success that we're having?
All right, let's go through some of your ventures. Broad Street Ventures, the only athlete-led venture capital firm fully funded by Black and Brown investors. I know Jacoby Brissett, others are coming on board. How do you get people involved? What are you investing in? Tell us a little bit about Broad Street Ventures.
Yeah, so Broad Street Ventures, again, came from the idea of, how are other people making money outside of labor? And you look at, venture capital and in that space, investing in companies. And we looked at Rashawn Williams as somebody in the space who's been doing a lot. He helped Nas, the rapper Nas, start Queensbridge Ventures, which made Nas way more money than him ever rapping, right? And so as an athlete, I'm looking at the same thing. How do I make more money off the field than I have on the field? And so we reached out to Rashawn, Rolanda and myself, went to his house, and he had a free seminar. We just kind of went down, what is VC, what are the strategies and things like that. And fast forward, I had a vision for how do I create this for Black athletes and and entertainers. How do we collectively use our money? Because I know I've invested in one-off companies by myself. You cut a big check, 90% chance or higher that it's going to fail. You don't have anybody to do due diligence for you. You don't know the questions to ask. And so not only do we create opportunities for guys to be able to invest and participate and collect in group economics, but the education piece is really the main piece that I want. We don't pressure anybody to give us money, but we hold seminars, the same kind of seminars I went through, to give guys the exposure to this space. This is what VC is. These are our strategies. Here are companies that we're already in. So our fund, we opened it up in October, and we're in 10 companies already. We were in Airbnb, which made an exit last year. Wow. So that was a great, we haven't even closed the fund. Right, yeah. We got Noble, Dapper Labs, Toro, and a few others. And we plan on a few of those other companies making exits by probably by the end of the year. And so we're going to close that fund in the next 6 months. And so the biggest thing is just trying to make people aware, get them educated about the space, the opportunities that are out there, what the strategies are, and understanding that we as athletes have the ability to get into some of the best deals that are out there because of who we are. Companies want to have smart money, not just the dollars, but who we are, the social leverage and capital that we have as athletes and entertainers brings, a certain amount of opportunity. And so we can get into the best deals, instead of the ones that come to us from, friends, family. And then once we secure those things, the next focus is in how do we take those returns and push them back into Black and Brown companies, and, who need startup money, who need investors. How do we then help in that space as well? But we first have to secure the gains to do that. And so that's the biggest thing with Broad Street Ventures, educating the Black and Brown entertainment investors and showing them what to do, but then secondly, giving them real opportunities. So if you invest in our fund, you are automatically in 10 different companies, one of which has already made an exit. So, those are the type of opportunities that I want to bring to my peers.
That's great. I mean, I've had Andre Iguodala on, and the way he basically put it is, if you can hit on 2 or 3 out of 10 investments, it's just like a baseball player, right? You're batting 300, you're doing really well. You don't hit on all of them, but you take your chances and you do your due diligence. But I love the fact that you're involving others and you've got a good portfolio across different companies. And Airbnb, that was really good timing.
Yes, it was. Yeah, we were happy about that one for sure.
Let's talk about Disrupt Foods, because there's an industry that a lot of athletes get into, but that's not an easy business. But it seems like you're doing well in that space. And again, you're bringing others with you into the space. Tell us a little bit about Disrupt Foods.
Yeah, so Disrupt Foods is where we focus on our franchising, most of which have been in quick service restaurants. And so, what we've learned is that, or what I've learned, as an athlete in this space, is that this is an operations business, right? It's not something you put your money into and it just automatically comes back. This is solely based off of operations. And Joe Johnson, who runs all of the operations on that side for me, has a ton of experience in the business and has really been taking the restaurants we've had and been growing them. So we have an opportunity to acquire about 11 more quick service restaurants on the East Coast. And what we're trying to do is similar to what we're doing with Broad Street Ventures, is to open that up to athletes who may be trying to get into franchising. With Athletes Franchising Partners is the fund we're trying to create, where guys only have to put their money into it and they automatically become a franchisee. And we work on and handle all of the operations for those stores. Like I said, we have a track record. We already have 12 stores under our belt and trying to get to 30 by the end of 2025. And we want to do that by giving guys access to be able to invest, put their money into it. Knowing that in the franchise space, only about 15% of franchisees are African-American, and it's way lower than that when you get to quick service restaurants. And so even some of the spaces we've been in, there's been only 5 or 6, a handful of other Black franchisees in the entire company. So there's a huge space for us to be able to, I think, move into some things that we can kick doors open and give guys, again, exposure to, another style of investment without having to worry so much about the operations.
Are there any specific restaurants that you're invested in that you could talk about, or are you still looking into that?
Yeah, so right now we have 12 restaurants under Papa John's franchises. But when we create the fund, the Athletes Franchise Fund, that'll be open up to many quick service restaurants. That won't be just one franchise. We're looking for opportunities to grow, but we obviously already have our foot in the door with Papa John's.
I mean, I look at Papa John's, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't Shaquille O'Neal part of Papa John's? And do you know Shaq? Have you guys talked about this?
Yeah, we have. I mean, we've been with Papa John's for a few years. Even like we got into Papa John's right before they, hit the former CEO, got to talking really crazy and the company struggled for a little bit. But our stores performed, even in that turmoil, performed probably better than a lot of stores. And we were fresh into it. And now, here we are on the next turn of it. You get Shaq into it. He changes a lot of the culture, not only from just being a franchisee, but some of their community efforts. And then him being on the board was very, very important, especially even to me as a franchisee, to be reinvested into that brand. And since then has taken that brand and really elevated it. And when we look at franchising, one of the unique things that I like about it is there are so very few Black franchisees out there, but the majority, I feel like, of the workers oftentimes are Black and brown, right? And the stores are oftentimes in Black and brown communities. And so how we get an opportunity to affect the workers, who and create jobs in our own communities and be the bosses, right? And make sure that we take care of people and we create opportunities for people not only to work and to manage, but how do they move from a manager standpoint or position up to an ownership? How do we get them to elevate to be franchisees? Those are all things that we're thinking about and weighing as we move into the franchise space.
I love it. Listen Up Media, your content company. What are you working on there? Because I'm reading things that you're working on, and it sounds like you've got some exciting projects in the works.
Yeah, the first project we were able to get on was the documentary Black Boys. Is streaming now on Peacock. I was really proud of that piece. Came on as an executive director. And one of the things that we're working on now is I did a fellowship at Harvard last year. And one of the things that I studied was the wealth gap between African Americans and white Americans, knowing that on average, white Americans have about 10 times the net worth of African Americans, and understanding what does that look like throughout history. How do we get here today? And so I'm working on a docu-series now where we explore the wealth gap between African Americans and white Americans over that span of time of American history. And that's something I found gave me great understanding. Is obviously a huge motivator for why I'm moving in this space now, and we're picking up the narratives that we are, is because you see how I've had a foundation since 2010. I've done a ton of charity work, but what you realize is when you create programs, your kids and the youth come to your programs and they go back to the environments that they came from. The only way to really truly bring justice and equality to our country is to change the environments in which those youth come from. And to do that, there's no way to do that without creating financial stability, without creating generational wealth, jobs, opportunities, and creating a financially stable, citizen. And so those are all the things that we're trying to do. And even in Listen Up, it's a creative branch for me to be able to speak, and use my voice in the most effective way. I think I've always been exposed to sports media outlets or social media, and you just really can't have true dialogue or long drawn out ideas or well vetted, thoughts in those spaces. And so this is a way for me to own my own voice, to put out my own narratives, to tell the stories that I want to tell, that I think, need to be told from an education standpoint, but even from just documenting our existence and our voice is important to do through film.
I've seen you on CNN. I think you do an outstanding job as a contributor. Has that experience helped you a little bit with your content company? And I look at your former teammate, Drew Brees, who's off to NBC, and I've looked at you many times and said, I think Malcolm could be a really good contributor, to a sports network when you're done. Are those things that interest you?
Yeah, they definitely interest me. And there are some opportunities out there. Obviously I went to school for strategic communication. So, dealing with the media and analyzing, especially football, is very easy for me. Like, I love to talk about, ball. But even contributing in CNN this past year has been a unique situation for me. It's the first time I really have been given a platform to speak, in a political, space where it's not sports, where I'm not the smartest person, on the microphone. But it's been great for me too, to be able to really think about how to use my voice in the most effective way. I take that platform very serious, so that when I do show up, I'm saying something that's meaningful and that I think will age well over time. And so I think that is giving me a lot of practice to really figure out my voice, and it's helped frame some things for me and what I want to do with Listen Up Media. You've
done a tremendous amount of work in the community, as you were saying, both through your foundation, but I look what you're doing on the social justice front. And again, I tip my hat to you, because you're not just speaking on TV. You're going to meetings, you're rolling up your sleeves, and you're on the front lines of this. I had Emmanuel Acho on recently. How are we doing? Because we see the shooting in Minnesota this week that was so unnecessary, and I feel like every time we're taking a few steps forward, we take 10 steps backwards. How are we doing with progress here?
I don't think that we're doing well. I think that um, oftentimes in this space, we get caught up in the pageantry of change and not the actual work of change. So, there has been a ton of companies and sports leagues and voices that have all come out. They can condemn the violence. We can make banners and slogans and hashtags and all feel good because we've verbally put ourselves on the right side of history. When we look at what has gone into, the changes in policy that, will eliminate the victims that we constantly see, none of that has been really put, into the fire. None of that has been abandoned. We still are, debating, right now, even, with the George Floyd trial, in in progress, we are still seeing that we are divided on the idea of policing, and that's a lot of work that I'm still doing and trying to focus in Philadelphia right now as they try to figure out or introduce a policy that would create a oversight board, a community oversight board that actually has teeth and can hold police accountable. Those type of things, which seem like no brainers, right? You would want your community to be able to hold the police departments that they pay taxes to accountable. Those things are not in place right now, and there's actually huge opposition to keep it that way. And the hard part about all of it is that there is growing violence right now around the country, and everybody wants to feel safe no matter what community you live in. But the trust with Black Americans and the police just hasn't been earned, and has been really chiseled away over decades. And it doesn't make it better when solutions are kind of put on the table to add up some more accountability so that people can restore trust. If there's no accountability, that trust will never be restored. And then it's hard for officers to actually go and clean up neighborhoods that are riddled with violence because you don't have people who are participating. You don't feel like the community doesn't feel like the police will protect them, nor do they have the best interest of the community in mind. And that just creates a cycle in which poverty, over policing, and violence tears Black and brown communities apart.
Is the NFL doing a better job at supporting your efforts? Again, Roger Goodell comes out last year after the George Floyd killing, and we need to do better. And I'm hearing rhetoric. Are they doing better? I mean, I'm not behind the scenes like you, so I don't know if it's rhetoric or if it's action.
Well, I think the NFL players are doing a great job when it comes to the work that needs to be done and some of the advocacy. I think you see guys doing more than just social media and just, and just speaking up, but actually getting out there and affecting local and state politics, or providing some kind of, resource to those who are fighting for it. I think the NFL has done a good job when it comes to cutting checks. But when it comes to the potential of a league like the NFL and the influence, I think they I think they fall short. You hear Roger Goodell make the statements that need to be said, but oftentimes it's never a proactive statement. It's always reactionary and kind of late to the party. But more importantly, you don't really hear many of the NFL owners or team owners being active. And I think those are the guys who have the most power, especially politically, to really push on these state and local, politics. You look at what the NBA did with the All-Star game and moving it from Atlanta, or I think it was the NBA or whatever league it was who moved it from Atlanta. That is significant. You are taking your business and moving it in a way that affects local politics. I think that is where the potential of these leagues have, and I think if that is the bar, then our league has fallen short. But I also have a very high standard for people who have true potential.
Few minutes left before I let you go. You're a fashion guy. I mean, I see your fits and they are A+. Damari is a company that you have. Tell our listeners about that and how you got involved in that. It seems like that's a passion of yours, so I bet it's fun to be the head of that company.
Yeah, it's definitely a passion project of mine. I started Damari probably 5 years ago. It's going fast. And and is a custom clothier. So we make custom clothes for men and women, mainly suits, but are branching out into other a larger product offering to some more casual wear. But it's essentially, I feel like your clothes, or at least for me and where I grew up, your clothes and your style has always been a form of self-expression. And so for me, it's the way that I, express myself. I feel the way I dress. And I've always, enjoyed putting those things together. So to be able to put my hand into designing, where I get to make all of the clothes that I wear, it's been fun. And being able to bring on some other designers that I think are, up and coming, that are really doing some cool things. We've done everything from red carpet looks for celebrities to guys in the NBA, the NFL, MLB. We've got a ton of guys, even just local patrons and weddings and things like that. We've been able to service people from all over through this, and be able. And I always talk about the difference between fashion and style. I'm not huge into fashion, the trends, the things that everybody wants to get on, but I am very focused, and I enjoy helping people find their style. And what I mean by that is helping them find their voice, what's comfortable on them, what helps them feel like the best version of themselves, and not the best version of what they saw somebody else wear. And I think that part, to me, is really the part that I enjoy, is getting in with a client, getting them to stretch themselves just a little bit, but really stay within, the confines of who they are as a person, and find their voices through their clothes.
17th game added to the NFL schedule. It's another opportunity for players to get injured, but it is a little bit more money for everyone as part of the new collective bargaining agreement. What do you think of game 17?
Well, I think, the players have spoken. It was a lot of going back and forth. Players spent a lot of time weighing the options as to, what are the health and safety, aspects of playing a 17 game, but what are also the business, and monetary gains to playing a 17 game. And I think when we went to a vote, the vote passed that we want to go to a new 17 game. Then that came with a lot of new benefits. That came with guys getting compensated for that 17 game. And then hopefully everybody after that negotiates with the 17 game, in mind. But in hindsight, that was all pre-COVID. After we signed that first collective bargaining agreement, we went into COVID, and then you have a year where revenues dip. And we're spreading that loss, across the next few years as players. So to have the TV deals that have come in and a 17 game that's going to add some more revenue to it, I think helps from a business standpoint of recovering from a year where revenue was down. So while nobody really wants to play more, I think players, again, it went through our democratic process, it got passed. So that is what it is. But we made sure that we secured an increase in benefits, a significant increase in benefits, an increase in salary. Our minimums went up. Guys are getting compensated for that 17 game. And moving forward, like I said, recovering from what was a down year because of COVID, having this new strand of revenue definitely helps.
Last question for you. Drew Brees retired. I know he was a leader and a Hall of Fame voice in that locker room. Now the dynamics of the locker room change. You've always been a great leader. You pointed out earlier, you've been captain on most every team you've been on. How does the dynamics of the Saints locker room change now that Drew Brees has moved on?
Yeah, I mean, Drew's been in that locker room since I've been in the NFL. So to imagine the Saints locker room, at least for me, without Drew Brees, takes a little bit of a stretch of the imagination. But at the same time, the reality is that there are, qualified leaders on the team that will take over. I think DeMario Davis being, kind of the A1 kind of guy in the locker room, just always a great voice, in leading guys on both ends of the ball, or really all three phases of the game. Great rapport with the coaches. Cam Jordan is a guy who's been with the Saints his entire career. Quality, high quality player, but also a great leader. We lost Thomas Morstead, who was one of our captains as well. And he was my draft class in 2009. He got with the Saints. So losing him and Drew, I think, will be big. But guys like myself, Teron Armstead, a few of the captains, and there are going to be some new captains, you know, that come up, and I think that's the exciting part. Like, you know, what do you get from a Jameis Winston, right? What do you get from some of the younger players that are now going to be pushed into that role of being a leader?
All right, I got to ask you this. It just popped into my head. So I see news yesterday. There's going to be a movie about Sean Payton, and the person playing him is Kevin James, who I just don't see Kevin James as Sean Payton. Like, if you just look at them, they don't look at all alike. And he's been in like Paul Blart, Mall Cop, and
Right.
what did you think when you saw that? Were you like, what?
With Sean, it's hard. You can't predict anything with Sean. So I'm just looking forward to seeing what the end result will be. I'm sure if it's a story about Sean Payton, it'll be an entertaining one for sure.
Malcolm Jenkins, New Orleans Saints, two-time Super Bowl champion, the head of Malcolm Inc. Congratulations. You can follow him on Twitter and Instagram at Malcolm Jenkins. Like I said at the beginning, I've wanted to have you on for a long time. I think you are doing A+ work in our world. Thank you. Keep it up, and best of success to you.
I appreciate it.